Okay, hello everyone who's joined. We'll be starting in a few moments. Hopefully you can hear me. The irony of me having some sort of cold coming on whilst talking about resilience is not lost on me, trust me. But thank you very much for joining. If you're waiting and you have a couple of minutes, or you're sat there with a couple of tea and kind of wondering what to think about, have a think about what's in the bottom right hand corner of your screen. Have a think about what challenge you or your team are facing right now and what you want to build resilience for. What does it mean for you right now? And we'll get going in a couple of minutes.
Yeah, we have 2 minutes, I think, until we're starting.
Perfect. Thank you, Richard. So just sort of a couple of quick introductions just while we get everyone joining. Thanks everyone who's joining. Great to have you with us. So my name's Anthony. I'll do another introduction shortly, but I'm head of consulting here at Bailey & French. And I'm joined by my colleague, Richard.
Hello, yes, I'm Richard, as Anne just kindly pointed out, and I'm in the learning team here at Bailey & French.
Perfect. You should have access to either a question box or a chat box. Some of you may have both. If you've got the chat box, can you just put a quick message in there and say, hey, just so I know that it works for you. If not, maybe something into the question box, just so I know that works for you at least. And then we can kind of kick off in a couple of minutes. So if you can put something into the question box or the chat box, whichever one is working. Yeah, perfect, Alison, thank you. Richard, it's great to have you on this one because you can see all the questions as well coming through.
Yes, no, I think Chloe said hello as well. Hello, Chloe.
Got quite a full session today, so this is obviously a session that's hot topic for everyone. So thank you for joining. Thank you for taking the time. Feel free to have some lunch or grab a cup of tea or coffee or something. We'll be getting underway shortly.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining.
In the meantime, I've quite enjoyed the sight of our MD walking past my room on tiptoes, trying to be quiet, knowing that the recording is in process. I appreciate the over-exaggerated trying to be quiet.
Love it. Yeah, sorry everyone, we've kept you all on mute, but there will be time right at the end if you want to come off mute and ask any questions or you've got anything else. But please feel free to ask questions of us as we move through this. We said 45 minutes, it may be less, so you might get some time back in your day. But please feel free to put things in the chat, put things in the question box. If you've got access to it, you should do.
Yeah, we've got quite a lot coming through the questions. Some well wishes for you as well. Thank you, Jess. That's very
It's typical, isn't it? It's typical. The only time that you talk about resilience, you go and get a cold.
Just get better. We're doing a tough mudder on Saturday as a team, so
There we are.
fingers crossed you're better for that.
Yeah, it's just me trying to get out of it. That's what it is. Thank you, Lexi. Yeah, looking forward to it as well. Thank you. Good to have everyone with us. As I say, clearly a hot topic. So if just while we're getting ready to get underway, we've got the box in the right-hand side of the screen. Hopefully you can see my screen all okay. But just reflect on why you're here and what you're wanting to get out of from today. What challenge you want to maybe be facing or what's coming up for you, why you want to be resilient, what resilience means for you, whether you're kind of part of a team or whether you're leading a team or leading a business or a function, all really important. And hopefully we can share some top tips with you today. Richard and I, the reason this kind of came about was actually because we were chatting away and there's been a lot of requests around, okay, so we've done a lot of stuff around kind of well-being and what's next? How can we help our teams who are maybe newly formed because there's been lots of people kind of moving around and what does all of this mean? So if we were to focus on one thing, what would we focus on? So that's where it's all come about. So hopefully some useful things. Let's get underway. There seems like there's kind of not loads of people joining now, so we've got everyone, which is fantastic. So thank you for joining. I really appreciate it. As I said at the beginning, but I'll reintroduce myself. My name is Anthony. I'm head of consulting here at Bailey and French. So I've kind of got a background in psychology, work with the learning team, working alongside Richard on all things strengths, human leadership, well-being. What's the challenges that our people are facing right now and our clients are facing. Joined here today by Richard. Richard, do you want to say a couple of words?
Yes. Hello, good afternoon. So, Richard, as Ant kindly pointed out there, and I really want to start by saying thank you, Ant, for inviting me to join you on this webinar about resilience. It's something that I've been going on about a lot recently because, as points out, all of our clients, and particularly mine, are just talking about resilience now. I guess we've moved on a little bit of the general well-being that we had during the pandemic, and now what with things that are happening in the news, which I really don't want to go into, and personal and professional lives, people are really worrying about their team's resilience, that it's maybe going to lead to burnout or lower engagement, or as it's now called, quiet quitting, which is a new name for I think something that's been around for quite a long time. But it's good that people are talking about it, and I think it all comes back to this: what's the resilience of the team and how that's affecting performance.
Yeah, and it was really good speaking to you and kind of going through, right, well, what's going to be the most relevant for people today, and what can we share? And I wanted to start off with this kind of word and phrasing around psychological capital. You may be familiar with the term. It's been around for a while, but it's something that people don't necessarily relate to resilience unless they know of the model around psychological capital. So psychological capital is the capacity that someone has to overcome challenges that they might be facing, right? It's the kind of it's the stuff in your back pocket, the feeling that you can overcome a challenge. It's, I believe in myself that I've got the skills to overcome this challenge. I'm hopeful that I will be able to achieve what I need to set out to achieve. And I feel strong even when things are uncertain and evolving, and I don't know what's around the corner. I can still feel in myself that I'm strong, and I felt that kind of encapsulates everything by what people are meaning by resilience right now. So just to kind of kick us off, really, let's give yourself a score out of 40 on the scale that we've got in front. So read a couple of those questions. Let's see where everyone's at. If you feel comfortable, please feel free to put it in the questions box or the chat function, put your answer in. But how are people right now? How much stuff do you feel like you can take on? What is your capacity levels right now? Do you feel hopeful that you can achieve your objectives? Do you believe in your ability to overcome? Do you feel strong even though there's so much change and internal and external factors that might be influencing that? And do you feel positive about the future? When I did this, I sort of put myself as a score around 30, which to me felt quite high. So it's quite interesting when you do this, and these are really good questions just to reflect on, actually, whether it's when you're feeling down or whether it's when you're feeling up. Reflecting on these questions can be quite powerful. So let's see what people think. We've got a few more joiners who have joined, so welcome to you folks who are joining us. Put things in the questions box or the chat box if you feel like you want to share. But just to recap for some of those joiners, psychological capital, kind of your capacity to overcome challenges or your perceived capacity. Got a few things coming through. Fantastic. Thank you for sharing. It's really great to kind of see some of those scores. And maybe if you're just sitting there having a cup of tea and reflecting on this or doing something else while you're listening, it's great. What is your score out of 40? What is your score out of 40? So 1 to 10 for each of those scores. I'll move us along. But great to kind of think about it, and we'll maybe reflect on that again at the end. So when we think about why we're here, why Richard and I thought about this topic, and we've said that we don't really want to go into all of the depth and detail around this, but there's some really cool stats and research that people are doing that are saying that people are really struggling. And the reason I say that's cool, because it's not fun, it's not great, but what it does mean is it's pushing businesses to do and act maybe slightly differently than what they have been doing already. And actually, what I was surprised by when I saw these statistics was that actually most people do actively believe that their company is doing a lot to promote good well-being and good activities around mental health and poor mental health, and addressing some of the stigma, and really trying to embody this new future of work and supporting their people. The trouble is only half believe that it's effective. So there's this real mismatch here. And this is what got Richard and I to really be thinking, well, if we were to do one thing, if we were to focus on one thing, if we were to get our teams to focus on just changing one thing about their week and their day, what would it be? And kind of trying to distill things. And there's loads that we could have gone through. So those of you who maybe kind of attended some of our previous sessions, or you've been part of the Bailey and French and you've been following us on LinkedIn and things, you know that we'll give out webinars and handouts and things around reframing stress. Your mindset can be incredibly powerful to overcoming kind of stresses and taking on new tough challenges. There's loads of things that around Martin Seligman, around thriving, and the kind of key conditions that you need to feel at your best, and making sure all of those things are in place. But actually, what did we want to focus on? And we wanted to focus on strengths. And I'll hand over to Richard to talk a little bit more about strengths, but we felt like this was a really important one, didn't we?
Yes, I mean it can have such an impact. But what are strengths? So you might already be using your strengths. You might have come to one of our strengths discovery workshops that we hold every Tuesday, or you might have discovered your strengths personally or through books or through assessments from other companies. You may have gone even one step further than just using them in your personal and professional life. You might have them listed on your CV. You might use them to put together your quarterly or annual reviews. But really, what are strengths? Strengths are the things that energize us. So we know strengths are set in our childhood, that they're innate, but it's really important to discover them as you get older, to use them to increase your resilience. I always like to think of resilience as a bank, a savings account of psychological capital, and everything that you're doing to be thriving, to be happy, you're topping up that bank account. But then you've built up that reserve. So when it does get leaner, when times are hard, when you get that rainy day, you can use that bank to power through and be resilient, and you're not going to go into the red. And so why are strengths important for that? Well, by using your strengths for just 10 hours a week, and there's 168 hours in a week, you're less likely to quit work. You're going to have higher engagement, a higher quality of life. You're topping up that resilience by using your strengths. And moreover, you're being less stressed, you're being less angry, you're being less sad, you're spending less of your reserves as well. So just by using your strengths for just 10 hours or more if you can, you're going to be increasing it. Which kind of brings us on to our first activity really nicely. So if you're comfortable, we'd love to hear what you're saying by putting it in the question or the chat function. If you don't want to share, or maybe you don't have the ability to at the moment, jot it down on a piece of paper. Or if you can't write it down, really try and visualize it. Try and work it over in your head and spend the time looking inwards, concentrating on yourself. So, first activity, think of a time when you've bounced back from adversity or a challenge. Think of a time when you've bounced back from adversity or a challenge. What got you through? Were there some tasks maybe? What gave you energy? And are there any themes that you're already starting to notice? While you're working through that, I can give you an example from myself. At the age of 25, I decided I was going to have a complete career change. So I went from being an actor and deciding I wanted a proper job, a corporate job. University for me came through not having control. I couldn't control what employers were going to, the decisions they were going to make. I couldn't really control where my life was going through that short period. And being results driven as one of my strengths, I wanted to create lots of little tasks that I could get towards my goal. And I did that by creating lists. I did that by researching companies. I did it by preparing for interviews so that I could see all these little achievements to get me towards my goal. And not just directly, but indirectly as well. My hobbies. So I went to the gym and I could see lots of little gains towards my ultimate goal. Anything that could get me towards achieving results, topping up my psychological capital, making me resilient. So if I got knocked down from an interview, I can bounce back, carry on. Some nice ones coming through now. Current one that I've got, the building opposite me is being refurbished, and I'm watching it go through each stage of its refurbishment. I'm really enjoying the results and the goals that that building's had, even though they're not mine, which is probably a little bit of an overshare to you, Ant, there, that I'm staring out the window at the building opposite. Sorry. I do work.
Yeah, you mentioned it this morning. It did make me laugh. It was great. But this is the thing, and there's some brilliant ones in there around building strong relationships with people, mentors, loved ones, family. There's a lot of kind of human connection. And what's really interesting is kind of peeling back those layers. So what is it about going for a walk with a friend that you really enjoyed? Was it just unleashing and kind of providing that support or feeling that human connection, or was it because that person was helping you build a plan? And kind of your strengths are the things that when we start to peel back those layers, it's really interesting. Some of you have really interesting and challenging kind of situations.
Jess, wow. Thank you for sharing. And Ian, humor is so important. Thank you.
Yeah. Brilliant. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because it seems like, and I know there's a lot of work, Viktor Frankl, for example, working on purpose and those sort of small tasks, getting through each day and connecting it to a purpose. This is why kind of there was so much to cover in this. But the strengths theme for us and the philosophy around focusing on the things that we do have and focusing on the energy that we can create for ourselves, being able to almost be our own energy bank, kind of print our own money in our psychological capital bank, being able to do that and build the skills for our teams to do that is so vital when we're talking about building team resilience. That's fantastic. Yeah, really, thank you for sharing, everyone. And there's loads more coming through. I am going to move us on just because of time. But Richard, thank you for that activity, and I know you've got more coming up as well. I'll move us on only quickly onto the strengths checklist. So those of you who have already turned up to some of those sessions, the strengths discovery sessions, we can send a link. Follow us on LinkedIn is probably the easiest way to get access to that link. But when we go through that, we'll be able to help you uncover, well, what are my strengths? And we'll provide sort of a checklist and things for you to go through. So if you haven't already done so, be a part of that every Tuesday lunchtime UK time. But the reason that it's so important is when we're finding flow. Finding flow as a team is kind of a really important way to build resilience together. Richard, you had a really good kind of way of defining flow, actually. So I'll let you kind of introduce what flow is.
I appreciate that. So flow was first observed by Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. And there's two things that you need to do to get into the state of flow. One is to have a challenge, and the other to be challenged, and the other is to play to your strengths. So the best way of imagining it is think of the last time you were doing, the easiest one is a hobby, so gardening, baking, playing computer games, whatever it may be, that you were so engaged, the time flew by. You looked at the clock and hours had gone past, and you were happy, you were thriving. For me, that would be maybe at the gym, an example I used earlier, where I looked at the clock and it was always 10, 20 minutes later along than I thought it was meant to be. Or at work, I think I've been chatting to a client for 10 minutes, and then I find out I've taken up an hour of their time because I'm so engaged. And I leave happy and thriving and just joyous, and that's all topping up my psychological capital.
Yeah, it's a great way of thinking about it, isn't it? Time flows by, time flying by. The problem with it is that it's all individual, right? It's based on that task. It's based on that thing that you're doing. And you can't always do that thing at work, right? There's things that you find, there's loads of questions and comments coming through around going for a run or being with friends. You can't do that at work necessarily. So when you talk about finding flow together as a team, it's less about that sort of individual task and more about the state and that environment that you create for the team to be more resilient. So helping the team understand their unique strengths can be a really quick and easy way to build resilience. Um, and you can do that whether it's a new team, whether it's an existing team, whether you're face to face, hybrid, remote, whatever the situations, there are ways that you can do that. So that's what we're going to focus on. Just what are some of the activities that you can do for yourself and self-reflection, but also what are maybe some of the activities that you can run as part of your team, or during your Monday check-in, or your Friday check-out, or your Friday learning sessions, whatever it might be that I know that you're all kind of busy doing. And it's really interesting when you look at kind of three key things. So three key ways that we can find flow together. And I'll kind of explain each of these three in a little bit of detail, and then I'll pass over to you, Richard, and you can run through those activities for each of these things. And because I think what's really important to me is that you walk away from today with a really clear action plan that's really simple, you can put into practice right away, and you can start building resilience within your team and within yourself. So should we get going on this one? So the first piece is kind of what we've already said, understanding each other's unique strengths. We know why that's important. We know what strengths are. It's those things that give us energy. So how we might do that, it's about a conversation. When were you last at your best? What were the things that you kind of found complete joy in? What were the things that you found easy? And having those discussions with yourself is great, but also have it as a team. Have a team discussion, and you can have that conversation within 2 minutes. It doesn't need to take up your whole week, but it's an investment of time that is incredibly powerful. Get people to be sharing about, what was the challenge that you've overcome recently and what strengths help you to get there? What is it about you that makes you so unique and so powerful and strong? When we think back to psychological capital, it's a really good starting point into helping teams build that psychological kind of capital together. Got a couple of questions coming through, so let me just pause on that one. So individual flow is recognizable, but how do you define the team flow? Good question. And without going, it's like individual flow, but for teams, I'll kind of put it into a little bit more of a context. You remember the picture in the previous slide where the birds, the murmuration, and actually it's where Brighton is, that's where we're based. But the murmuration is a really good idea of what it looks like when a team is flowing together. They all have a good understanding of each other's uniqueness and they respect each other's boundaries, but they also have very clear alignment into what direction they're going. And they don't bump into each other. They're not hindering each other. They all know how to motivate each other and move forward. And they stay connected. They don't kind of break off into groups and silos. They stay connected. They stay strong and resilient together. And that's why then finding flow can be so powerful for people and organizations. For me personally, when I think back to the times when my team has been in flow, or think of a time where you've been part of a great team, that's probably flow. Time flew. You were building strong relationships. You were all fired up and passionate about the same end result. Was it difficult? Probably. You're probably facing the same sort of challenges, remote working and other challenges around projects, not deadlines, not being hit and things like that. Challenge is always going to happen. And if anything, the research is saying that disruption's only going to get more. So if we can find ways to flow better together, that's what's really important. So hopefully I've answered that question well enough.
It's a really great question. Thank you for that.
Thank you. Yeah, it's really good. And it's good to reflect on these things as well. So once we've got those understanding of each other's unique strengths, how do we move into kind of aligning daily and weekly tasks to those unique strengths? It's all well and good knowing that someone has strength and energy in this area, But if I know that Richard, for example, has a results focused strength, well, how can I focus some daily and weekly tasks, maybe some competition, but some friendly ways to lean on that strength and help him feel energized. And what we will find is you start to create this culture of kind of reciprocating feedback and fun and enjoyment when we start to think about our strengths as a team. And that comes into the final point. How are we building time together to really value and build stronger connections through giving feedback on each other's strengths? Hey, Richard, I noticed when you were looking out the window and observing that building, I actually noticed that attention to detail is incredibly valuable for me. And actually, I was wondering on this project whether you could look through something for me, because I would really value your strength on that. Even just that conversation, Richard, hopefully that makes you feel good, right? There's a buzz of chemicals, but there's also a really practical thing that you're going to then do a task that is really matching your strengths. Having that conversation can be the quickest way that you build trust, resilience within your team. Hopefully that all makes sense. I know there's a few questions coming through, but I think I'm answering them as I'm going. But if there's any other questions on those things, fire away now, because we're about to jump into the activity.
I've seen a few people asking about the strengths discovery workshops. So if that is something that you would like to come along to every Tuesday, we'll probably email anyone anyway, but drop it into chat and we'll make sure that we send you a link.
Brilliant. Yeah, brilliant. Happy to do that. And if people want to message directly or things on LinkedIn as well, yeah, please feel free to reach out to Richard and I. Before I hand over to Richard then, if that's all okay for people and we're ready to move into the next section, let's just do a very quick recap, right? So we know that people are struggling. We know that there is difficulties, some things you can control, some things you can't. There's a number of ways that you could build that resilience within your team. There is one thing that we think, and based on research, is going to have the biggest and quickest effect on your team right now and within the next few months. And the foundation of that is understanding your unique strengths and the unique strengths of others. When you know that, you can kind of find flow more frequently in your everyday. You can find flow in your work, but also we can reflect on finding flow together and helping the team find a continued state of flow so that you can work more productively, be more engaged, be more happy, find more joy in the projects that you're working on together today. And whether that's face-to-face or remote, etc. All of these kind of conditions or these environments are kind of the same, and they're created by these three things that are in front of you. Understand each other's unique strengths, align daily tasks with the unique strengths of the team, and strengthen connection by praising and valuing and giving feedback based on these strengths. So with that in mind, Richard, I'm going to hand over to you for your activities.
Yes, so thank you very much for that. A really great description of that and a summary. Thank you. That's the knowledge building. That's only part of how we do learning at Bailey and French. We want you to take something away. We want you to take little nuggets, some nudges, in order that you can start implementing what you've learned today immediately with yourself and with your teams. So for that, we've got 3 activities that we'll do in sequence. We'll give you a couple of minutes each time again to either pop into chat what you're thinking, or if you'd rather write it down, or just think it over in your head, whatever's going to be best for you and whatever you're most comfortable with. So hopefully these will help you create an action plan or little bits that you can start doing, as I said, straight away for both you and your team's resilience. So how can we flow better together? When can your team find time to explore what challenges people have overcome, what strengths they've used to overcome them? So, for example, how we've done it and how I've seen it work really well is come together on a Wednesday afternoon. It can be during lunch or when you have a team meeting, in person or virtually. It really does work. You can flex this depending on how your team is structured. But get people together, get them talking about what challenges they've overcome, and then how they've done that, what strengths they've used to overcome that. Get people thinking about overcoming challenges. They've done it before, they can do it again. Start topping up that resilience. When's going to be best for your team? Are you going to put it in a one-to-one, Monday morning stand-up meeting before you start work, Wednesday lunch like we do? What are you going to do to get people talking about overcoming their challenges with strengths? Some good suggestions coming in here. It really has to work for you. We can't tell you to definitely hold a Wednesday lunchtime meeting. Your team might hate that. They might prefer to discuss it on a Monday morning. They might prefer to do it one-on-one or at the beginning of other team members. You could even use it as an activity before you kick off looking at maybe your sales figures for a month.
Jess, that's a really interesting one as
Yeah.
well. Workload varying so quickly and things changing at such short notice. It kind of prompted a project that came through for me the other day. Get the team together, and what do? You classically just focus on the task, and then everyone goes away and does their thing. And actually, it might be better use of time just to take 2 minutes and go, right, we've got this thing. It's going to change people's workload, but what strengths do we have that are going to help us overcome this?
Yeah.
What strengths have you used before? And just taking 2 minutes to even just write a couple of words. I'm going to use my creativity strength here. I'm going to use my collaboration strength, my critical thinking, whatever it might be. It really helps people to focus on the solutions. People that typically focus on positive emotions and strengths come up with sort of 12 rather than 5 different solutions, right? So there's that kind of positive mindset that you can then go away and focus on the task. So that's a really interesting one. Even when things get difficult and short notice, when you bring people together, focus on fighting a fire, you can still apply some of these principles. And I know there was other things in your comments, sorry, Jess, but there's they just sort of brought that thinking to mind. Sorry, Richard.
No, not a problem at all. I was just gonna say, think about when you are coming together to look at challenges, you are coming to try and find a solution to something. If you start the meeting off by talking about the challenges you've overcome before, think of how positive people are going to feel, how more resilient they're going to feel by setting off already knowing that they've done this before, that they've achieved more, and they can carry on doing it.
Yeah, really good point.
Thank you for the bits that are coming in there. It's really nice to read, and thank you for being so honest with us. Okay. Moving on to the second activity, thank you. And so, how can we flow better together? So this is about getting the people together, alignment. How can your team better align tasks with team strengths? So how can your team better align tasks with team strengths? I would say this is one of the easiest ones to do, and something that I always suggest to my clients. If you've got a critical thinker in your group, as Ant was talking about earlier, get them to critique some bits that are coming through. Get them to put some time aside in their diary, 15 minutes, maybe every other day, and then the rest of the team can go to them and say, I'm working on this, what do you think? Can you be a critical thinker for me and go through this? Is your attention to detail a strength? Okay, can you have a look at this and work out where the detail needs to be, where the potholes are? Or one of the easiest ones, if you've got someone who's really analytical in your group, if they excel at spreadsheets, if you pardon the pun, get them to get onto data entry, to creating the formulas, get them to do that using their strengths. And if they're using their strengths, what they're going to do, they're going to thrive. They're going to be happy. They're going to keep topping up that psychological bank. They're going to keep increasing their resilience. And they're not going to have that resilience drained by doing something they absolutely hate. That might be Excel. It seems that there's more people who dislike it than like it. So focus on your strengths. Get the team working together. Again, thank you for coming in. Yeah, honest feedback. That's so important with this. So people know what their strengths are and then how they can align them. Get people talking about their strengths. People like talking about what they're good at, what makes them thrive, what makes them happy.
I like this one. The strengths matrix. Noah, thank you for sending that through. Is something that I know has worked really well for people, whether you put it, I mean, obviously there's difference in terms of if you're a remote team, it becomes more difficult, but maybe not. Maybe you can download a resource or something. Maybe we could provide it. Maybe we already have it. I'm not sure. Actually, I might need to go and check that. We might already have something in the resource hub on the website. Check it out. I'm sure we might have something. If not, we should create it. It's a really easy way to just go, right, these are the people in my team and these are the strengths that I can call on at any one time.
Yeah.
Really quite useful.
Who's good in our team at presenting numbers? Who can do that to either internal or external? It's so useful. We need to do that or redo it for our team. We've had a lot of new starters recently. We've been working really hard to onboard some really talented people. What are their strengths? How can we use them? Okay, hopefully that's enough time for you to have had a good think through that. If not, write something down. And so if we move on to the last one, how can we flow better together? So this is the cohesion. What ways can we celebrate moments of flow or times people play to their strengths? What ways can we celebrate moments of flow or times people play to their strengths? So there's lots of different platforms. It could be Teams, it could be Slack, it could be in person, it could be Post-its on a team wall if you still do things like that, if you're getting together a lot. Get people talking through and celebrating those moments. And where does it fit in with your team? How does your team work together? What little things can you do? Bailey and French, we have some really talented consultants who have achieved these great things, these big wins. And before, they would put it on Teams, but they would put it on the Teams chat in their little group. Only a few people would see it. People probably who already knew they'd achieved this. But no, we want this company-wide. Put it on the whole company chats. Let us celebrate. Let us celebrate you. That's really great for the person who's being celebrated. They feel good about having their strengths recognized. And it feels good as well to point out someone's strengths, and to have praise, and to have the wins within the company. Again, you're topping up everyone's psychological capital. You're making them more resilient. So then if they do have a challenging day or a challenging time, they've got that resilience built up.
Yeah, what I love about that moment, and there's been a few of them recently in the team. I can see a few people that are probably going to be smirking as they're on this one. But there's been a few really great moments, and actually the really powerful thing to do is go, hey, you know that win that you've achieved, or you're proud of that. You know, it doesn't have to be a big thing. It could be something quite small, but as long as the person's proud of it, and you can kind of go, well, what strengths did you use? What was it that helped you to achieve that success? You know, was it the fact that you have a real passion and energy for being organized that enabled you to facilitate that session in a certain way that was really powerful for the client? Getting to kind of unpeel, not just give random praise, but to really unpack the layers behind the praise and to focus it on people's strengths can be a really powerful way. It's a really good example.
Yeah, Ian there saying that he calls them superpowers when he's getting his people to his clients to talk about it. That's a really good way of phrasing it, and it does help. Think of someone who maybe has imposter syndrome. That's a real drain on their resilience. They could be very talented, but if they don't know they are, don't think they are, that could be a real drain. By celebrating these successes, it's giving them those little bits of success, however small, that their strengths are valued, that they're doing well, topping up their resilience.
I love that idea as well. There's one that's come through, success feed in a chat. So having a separate chat function, or you know, if it's Teams or Slack or whatever kind of platform you're using. We did that a while back, actually. We need to do that again, but then we played it back at the end of the year and sort of took out the key successes on a bit of a video and just showing people's, you know, just seeing people's faces when you do something like that, to just remind people that actually you've overcome a lot and you've come quite far and your strengths haven't gone away. the scenario, the impact, the climate that you're working in, the project that you're working on, or what have you, has all changed. And cost of living and everything that's happening in the world right now, it doesn't feel that great. But actually, you have the strength, you've got the strengths, and they've helped you to achieve some amazing things. So, kind of focusing on those can really help with that psychological capital. You're right, Richard.
Yeah. So you've done it before, you can do it again. Thank you. I think that's quite a few people. Again, just thank you for being so honest. I never said at the beginning this was my first ever webinar that I've been part of, and I've never really got to read everyone's questions like this in real time. So it's really lovely. Such a nice bunch of people.
We'll have to talk about what strengths you've used during the session. Got to practice what we preach, right?
Yeah.
So I'll move us on, and thank you, Richard. And yeah, it's been great actually. Given it, first one, that's awesome. So thank you. It's been really great. And you kind of were talking about this as a topic, and I know a number of the team have. So thank you to everyone that's on this webinar who's part of that team who was coming up with that. I'm going to kind of lead us onto the psychological capital. So at the beginning, there was lots of 30s and 32s. You might still be at the same place, right? I mean, the reality is you haven't applied any of this learning yet. But it would be really interesting. And if you want to stay in touch and you want to post something on LinkedIn, or you want to kind of let us know how you get on, but I'd be really curious in a week's time when you start to apply these things, once you've got to know people's unique strengths, you've got a bit of clarity on how they can use their strengths in their everyday, and you've started to kind of introduce the kind of concept around strengths-based feedback and that action plan around those three things. When you started to apply that, I'd be really interested to hear your numbers and how they've changed, and maybe how they've changed for your team, right? So because the more kind of psychological capital and the more resilience that you have as an individual, whether you're a leader, as I said at the beginning, whether you're an individual contributor of that team, the leader of the team, leader of a department or a business, your own resilience is key. You staying and role modeling and staying afloat and doing all these things and making these changes is what's really powerful, and then that is quite catchy for the rest of the team, right? So hopefully that's really great, and hopefully that's been helpful for you. Hopefully we've delivered what we wanted, and we've certainly done it in the time. So we will leave you now, but stay connected. It would be great for you to join some of the other sessions that we have on. We've got obviously the strengths discovery that we've been mentioning throughout this. We mentioned that just because it's free, it's there, it's every Tuesday. If you've been before, come again. It'd be great to have you back and then kind of go through that. I know there's often a lot of people that come up to me and go, hey, I was thinking about this the other day and I was applying this strength and I wasn't sure it was the right strength. So please, it's great. It's a good little community that come together. And sign up to the newsletters, follow us on LinkedIn. That's always the best way to get some of these free resources and access to some of this content. Bailey and French are here kind of humanizing the world of work. That's our mission. We're here to help you and help your teams to just enjoy the work and enjoy life. And there's a lot of things going on. So anything that we can do to help you, any questions that you've got, post it our way, and you never know, we might be talking about it on a webinar. Maybe you want to be part of a webinar and you've got some things to share and to talk about. It'd be great to have you a part of it. So thank you for staying connected to the Bailey and French family. So thank you. If you want to stay on and unmute yourself and ask questions, then you can do. But yeah, thanks, Richard, and thank you to you. It's really great.
Yeah, no, it's been a real pleasure. It's been nice getting a chance to really dive into resilience. Although I mean, we scratched the surface if you really think about it.
Yeah.
But I'm talking about it more and more, and it's hopefully helped some of you that are already thinking about it, and maybe started to get those who aren't to start looking at the resilience of their team. And you're in a good place now, but how can you prepare for the future? How can you make sure that psychological capital is topped up? So if things get harder, you're not going to go in the red, as I put earlier. Any other questions or anything people want to put through before we sign off, or anything you want to ask us? Hopefully we've answered your questions as we went along. Everyone's just saying nice things and asking questions.
Yeah, that's what I was just reading. Thanks, everyone. I really appreciate it. I'm glad it's helpful. big part of why I turn up to work every day, right? And so thank you. Your feedback is really helpful.
Yeah,
I'm glad it was useful.
it's the real nice thing about the way we work and the foundations is we're looking at things of positive, what you're doing well, and how can you use that to thrive? How can you use that to be more productive? And so it's always nice leaving these sessions feeling so energized and positive. Yeah, we'll definitely send you through the links to the Strengths Discovery. They're every Tuesday, 12 o'clock UK time. Virtual, same platform as this. They're about, we say up to 45 minutes, depends if people have questions, it can run a little bit quicker. It's just a really great introduction to strengths. And we'll make sure we send you the link.
Brilliant.
And
I
the
can see.
resources on strengths as well, yeah. Sorry.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, thank you. Yeah, resources. Yeah, and I'm not sure. You'll have to tell me, actually. People will have to log on and see. I'm actually not sure whether we got the strengths matrix on there. We'll have to figure that one out.
I'll
But
look on the
thank you.
resources hub.
I can see the kind of number of people on this session is quickly and rapidly declining, so it means you're all logging off. So unless there are any other questions or people want to unmute and ask any questions, then we will leave it there. We'll leave it there. Thanks again, everyone. Really appreciate you joining.
Thanks very much for your time.